The Lost Voyage. Jack stood on the edge of the pier, his eyes fixed on the endless stretch of ocean ahead. The salty breeze tugged at his hair, and the rhythmic sound of waves crashing against the docks filled the air. For as long as he could remember, the sea had been his home, his escape. But today, it wasn't the open water that held his attention. It was something he had found earlier that morning, something that sent a shiver down his spine. While exploring a secluded bay a few miles down the coast, Jack had stumbled upon a shipwreck, half buried in sand and hidden behind jagged rocks. The sight was eerie, the decaying wood of the vessel creaking as if still trying to stay afloat. Curiosity got the better of him, and he climbed aboard, carefully making his way through the crumbling remains. Inside, the ship was a chaotic mess: broken planks, rusted metal, and torn sails strewn everywhere, as if the vessel had been through a violent storm. Among the wreckage, Jack found something strange: a leather-bound journal, miraculously intact despite the years. The pages were yellowed and brittle, but the words were still legible. It belonged to the ship's captain, a man named Elias, and it detailed a journey that took place decades ago. As Jack read through the entries, he felt a chill run down his spine. Elias had been on a mission, a dangerous voyage across treacherous waters, in search of a mythical island that wasn't on any map. According to legend, this island was hidden deep within the ocean, cloaked in mist and surrounded by danger. It was said that those who found it would be granted unimaginable power, wealth, knowledge, or even eternal life. But the journey had been far from easy. The captain's journal was filled with accounts of strange occurrences, sudden, impenetrable fogs, bizarre weather patterns, and sightings of dark, shadowy figures that seemed to watch the ship from a distance. The final entries were the most unsettling. Elias wrote of feeling a sense of dread, a feeling that something was following them, lurking just out of sight. His last entry was brief, hastily scrawled, "We are close, but I fear what lies ahead." And then, nothing. The journal ended, leaving Jack with more questions than answers. What had happened to Elias and his crew? Why had they never returned? Jack couldn't get the story out of his head. It was a puzzle, a mystery waiting to be solved. And the idea of a hidden island, filled with secrets and lost to time, was too tempting to resist. He knew it was reckless, maybe even dangerous, but he also knew that if he didn't at least try to find it, he'd spend the rest of his life wondering what could have been. The next morning, Jack gathered a small crew of trusted friends and told them about the journal. They were hesitant at first, but Jack's enthusiasm was contagious. Soon, they were all on board, ready for an adventure.
As they set sail, Jack couldn't help but feel a thrill of excitement. The ocean was vast and unpredictable, but it was also full of possibilities. For days, they followed the coordinates scribbled in the journal, sailing farther and farther from the familiar coastline. The weather was fair, and the sea was calm, almost too calm, as if it was holding its breath. It wasn't long before things started to feel off. A thick fog rolled in out of nowhere, wrapping around the ship like a shroud. Visibility dropped to almost nothing, and the crew struggled to keep their bearings. It was exactly as Elias had described, and Jack could feel the unease spreading among his men. Then came the storms, violent, unpredictable, and unlike anything Jack had ever seen. The sky would be clear one moment, and the next black clouds would gather overhead, and the wind would howl like a beast. They fought through it, barely managing to keep the ship steady, but the real terror came at night. Jack would wake up to the sound of whispers, soft and indistinct, drifting through the ship. He tried to brush it off as his imagination, but the others heard it too, and they were all starting to feel the same creeping sense of dread. One night, as the fog thickened around them, Jack spotted something in the distance, a faint light flickering in the mist. He grabbed a pair of binoculars and strained to see, his heart pounding in his chest. The light flickered again, closer this time, and he realized with a jolt that it wasn't just a single light. There were several of them, moving slowly, as if something or someone was circling the ship. The next morning, they found one of the crew members missing. His bed was untouched, and there was no sign of a struggle, but he was gone. Panic spread through the crew, and Jack had to fight to keep them calm. They were too far out to turn back now, and he couldn't shake the feeling that they were close, just like Elias had been. As the days passed, the crew grew restless and paranoid. They would see shapes moving in the fog, hear strange sounds echoing across the water, but whenever they tried to get a closer look, there was nothing there. It was as if the island itself was toying with them, leading them deeper into the unknown. Then, one morning, the fog lifted, and there it was, the island. It rose out of the ocean like a jagged, dark silhouette, surrounded by swirling mists. It was beautiful and terrifying all at once, and Jack could hardly believe it was real. They anchored the ship and set off in a small boat, making their way to shore. As they approached, the air grew colder, and the whispers that had haunted them at night seemed to grow louder, more insistent.
The island was overgrown, wild and untamed, with dense forests and rocky cliffs. They wandered through it, following a narrow, winding path that seemed to lead deeper and deeper into the heart of the island. It was there, hidden among the trees, that they found the remains of Elias' ship, half buried in the earth, just like the one Jack had found back in the bay. But this time, there were no journals, no clues, just the rusted, decaying skeleton of a ship that had been lost to time. Jack realized, with a sinking feeling, that they weren't the first to come looking for the island, and they wouldn't be the last. The island wasn't just hidden, it was a trap, drawing in anyone who dared to search for it, only to swallow them whole. As the whispers grew louder, echoing through the trees, Jack knew that he and his crew had made a terrible mistake. They had found the island, but they would never leave it. The last thing Jack wrote in his journal, before the fog closed in around them and the whispers finally fell silent, was a simple, desperate plea: if you find this, turn back. Some mysteries are better left unsolved.